What's up, guys? Got a good one for you. In this podcast, we sit down remotely with Greg McHale of Greg McHale's Wild Yukon TV. This guy has dedicated his life to fitness and mountain hunting. Lots of great tips in here. We talk about Greg's former career as a professional adventure racer. What the heck is that? Greg will tell you. It's totally awesome. He's got some great stories, some great insights you can pull from it, and hopefully be inspired by it. Super fun stuff, guys. Tune in, check it out. All right, welcome everybody to our very first international podcast.
Nice.
We're doing this one remote with our neighbor to the north, Greg McHale of Greg McHale's Wild Yukon TV. So much more to Greg than just a TV host. However, they do have a heck of a TV program. I suggest you check it out. It is available on the Sportsman Channel. Hopefully you get that channel. You can also tap into Greg on their website, on their social platforms. All sorts of good stuff. Now, I'm going to have Greg introduce himself here in a second, but I'll give you a little bit of background. So, former professional adventure racer, super fit, tough as nails, and dare I say, dare I say, extreme mountain hunter, and I'm using an X in extreme for that.
Oh, yeah, we're going back to the 90s.
Going back to the 90s, we've got all sorts of neon colors, maybe some slash marks. I mean, we're talking real extreme.
Full-on extreme.
So,
are we going back to the 90s because that's your generation or mine?
Probably, unfortunately, both, Greg. Unfortunately, I feel like we both fall into that bracket. But without further ado, Greg, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and maybe kind of what led you to where you're at right now, and then we'll go into there and probably chat about mountain hunting in general and how you approach it.
Yeah, no, thanks for the introduction. It's great to be here with you guys. It's great to be your first international podcast. So I couldn't. I didn't know that's where I was heading before this one, but yeah, that's a great honor. No, thanks again. And yeah, where I came from, I grew up. Obviously, I live in Canada, so I'm a little further north than you guys, or to the east, depending on where you're at. I live in the Yukon, right next to Alaska. So probably the best mountain hunting on the planet, arguably, that we share with the Canadians share with Alaska. Obviously, there's some good places probably in Russia, but I don't know anything about those. So if you're talking about mountain hunting, I think that I live in a great spot. Grew up in Ontario, post-university. My wife and I, we moved out to the Yukon, never to return to Ontario again. So, yeah, and I can say that with an exclamation because, I mean, there's nothing in Ontario that compares to where we live now for the lifestyle that we really enjoy and require. It's been a journey getting here to where we are 25 years later after leaving the Yukon leaving Ontario for the Yukon. It's been a bit of a roller coaster as far as, you move away from a place that and you 6,000 kilometers and know nothing about the place you're going to really, in search of adventure, in search of the mountains. So that's kind of where it all started for me right after school. It's funny, I was working a security job, and a guy came in to the casino I was working at, and he had a Yukon driver's license, and I looked at that driver's license and I said, okay, like I could make this in my garage. Like, what is this thing? It was something like a high school kid just built so he could get his first, liquor store run. And, we sat and chatted about the Yukon for 2 hours literally while I was working. So clearly not a good employee. And then 2 weeks later, my wife, girlfriend at the time, we packed up her Plymouth Sundance with every piece of, outdoor gear that I owned. There was a canoe and a kayak on the top of this car, and we packed up our life and we moved to the Yukon.
So let me get this straight, Greg. So I mean, you obviously were passionate about the outdoors, but a person coming in with a handmade driver's license was the catalyst for you to move to the Yukon.
We had intention of moving out west, and we were going to move to Alberta, and then that situation happened at work, and I went home and I said, Denise, we're going to the Yukon. And she looked at me and like I had 10 heads, almost like, okay, where's the Yukon? That's how far away the Yukon is in our own country that, we really knew nothing about it, and then did the research. Back then it was have to go to the library to pick up some books and find pictures of the Yukon. And, that's exactly what we did. We, packed up the car, and like literally 2.5 weeks later, we were on the road for the Yukon.
Man, that is wild.
That is extreme with an X.
So it is. So, and now at that point, fitness is like a big part of, a big tool in your toolbox for being, a successful extreme mountain hunter.
Mm-hmm.
But your adventure racing, number one, how does one even become a professional adventure racer? Is that something that you were doing prior to going to the Yukon? And I guess what's the backstory on that? And I guess maybe we can even translate that into like, how does that apply to what you're doing nowadays?
Yeah, so the backstory on the whole adventure racing thing. See, I grew up playing very high-level athletics. I played hockey like every other kid in Canada does, especially in Ontario. So that was really my sport. And I once I realized that, Greg, you're not going to the NHL. It's
yet.
Like, okay. So now what are you doing? And after moving to the Yukon, I really got into it was really into the mountains, and I big wall climbed. I did I mountaineered, high peaks. I climbed McKinley and Logan, and just alpine big wall climbing stuff. And that's really where I started to learn the skills that were needed to be an adventure racer. Just the sufferability and being able to deal with weather, which climbing really provided a good foundation for that. And then just always looking to be fitter, and endurance was really a big part of that. And endurance sports really translates well to hunting, but certainly the adventure racing thing came around when there was there used to be a race called Discovery Channel put it on. It was called the Eco Challenge, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Yeah. Okay.
That sport, it's a sport of 4 people, with one has to be of the opposite sex. So the best teams in the world are 3 guys and 1 woman. And my wife is also a high level athlete. She's my wife is the Canadian 100-kilometer record. So she's raced on the Canadian national team. So I mean, she's a very accomplished endurance athlete, and it was just a sport that we could do together. And this race came to the Yukon, and the city of Whitehorse just kind of out of the blue called us up and said that there's this adventure race coming to the Yukon. Would you represent the city? So yeah, we put a team together, and after that 5-day race, I remember the first adventure race, which it took us about 5 days, and about 4.5 days in, I looked at my wife. We were trekking across this plateau and in the mountains, and just on no sleep and just trashed. And I remember saying to Denise, like, remind me never to do this again. and she looked back and said, yeah, no problem. And literally probably another, 3 weeks after our bodies came back to some semblance of normalcy, we were signing up for our next race. So that's kind of where it started. I've had, been very fortunate to have a wife that I could do these kind of things all around the world with. And it's much easier when you've got the support of, a family member that understands the drive and the goals and all of these things that are so key to success in that kind of an enduring, hard sport. So that's kind of where it all started for us. And then the translation to that is, to be quite honest, there really isn't any hunt that I can imagine that I've been on or probably could put together that would ever be as hard as the sport that I raced at professionally.
Wow.
That's saying something.
That's impressive, because I know, I'm aware of some of the hunts that you go on, and these are no cakewalks. You're doing this stuff and probably getting this too. I mean, you're getting in under your own power, oftentimes, the weather conditions, the mountains, and to satisfy Jim's need to throw in a car reference, to know that like one of these super tough hunts is a downshift for you is it's almost hard for me to fathom. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to downgrade, what mountain hunting is, but this sport that we raced at for 10 years is just, you have to understand, like, you could be racing for 6 days, and for the first 36 hours we don't sleep, and then every 24 hours after that we sleep from an hour and a half to maybe at most 2.5 hours every day. And you're doing it on all human powered, whether it's mountain biking, trekking, running, or paddling. These races start and they don't stop until you cross the finish line. You have to navigate by map and compass through terrain that you've never been in your life, whether it's Australia, whether it's Mongolia, whether it's some places on the East Coast in the U.S. Thick bush. We did a number of races, in one race in particular in Australia. In Australia, a lot of things can kill you, i.e., whether it's snakes or whether it's snakes, but they also have things like this stinging tree that if you get it on your body, it's immediate pain, and this poison in the stinging tree goes straight to your lymph nodes. So we've raced in situations like this where you just run into this stuff because you don't know better, and you can't avoid it. In the middle of the night, you're trekking through the bush with a head torch on, and you brush up against one of these plants, and then you have to continue for 4 or 5 more days. And the remedy for that particular plant is a sulfuric acid wash on your skin, followed by like a waxing where they try to rip it out. So, I mean,
this sounds like it's from personal experience that a lot of this stuff. Is it?
It's 100% personal experience. Like, we've got, in that particular race in Australia was the World Championships, and the top 5 teams, we were all just raging day one, and the race organizers said that you may get into some of this, and they showed us the plant, and be aware of it. You do not want to touch it. It's not deadly, but it's excruciatingly painful. So, and they said you may get into it, but we all got into it, and we're all sitting there. The top 5 teams, we're all sitting there, and like men are crying and passing out, and this is just kind of part of the game. So that level of pain is something that you can't necessarily anticipate. You just deal with at the time, and you persevere. You just keep moving forward. Or you can just quit. That's your other option. Just be a quitter and just shut it down.
So adventure racing sounds like, it doesn't take just being really physically fit. You know, I think sometimes I look at sports and you think about basketball, and of course you have Muggsy Bogues and other guys that have been real short in the league and whatnot. But it definitely doesn't hurt to be tall in basketball, and other sports, certain positions in football it doesn't hurt to be really, really big. And so I was trying to think, if there's some physical attribute that you need in adventure racing, but it almost seems like, yeah, you should be in shape, but a lot of it is in your head. Maybe even more, most of it. I
was going to say the mental toughness component has got to be off the charts. And I mean, what you're describing is like, I've never done like a triathlon. And I'm not sure I intend to either, but my brother-in-law's done a couple, and you've seen some folks when they cross, doing a full Ironman, and they're trucking along towards the finish line, and the second they cross that finish line, it's like complete body shutdown. And I'm like, to me, I'm like, your mind was the only thing that was keeping you going there. Yeah. And I don't know, can you speak to that, Greg, and kind of how you like powered through that? And I guess that's definitely one thing I wanted to touch on here was, mental toughness. How do you get it? And can you build it? Can you strengthen that like a muscle?
Yeah, mental toughness to me is so much the key. Certainly when you're talking about the top 10 teams in the world in the adventure racing, you cannot have any form of weakness on the team when it comes to both physicality and mentally, because it's all going to come out.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say you can't have it, but like it's going to come out no matter what. Because you can't push for 6 days or 10 days and not have your downtimes. Like, make no mistake, like I've been the weakest member on my team, and I've also been, the strongest member in almost every race. Some races you just have a great solid race and you just everything's going great. But lots of times, you're going to have a low point, and, somebody else is going to be carrying your backpack, and you're going to be carrying someone else's backpack, and you're going to be towing somebody, or you may be the guy that's getting towed. And this is the team aspect of that sport that is very appealing to me. And what I really love about it is because we help each other just move through these difficult times, and you can overcome things that you couldn't fathom putting yourself into the situation. But when you become mentally strong, and to answer to the point of is it like a muscle? 100% it's like a muscle. But a way to train mental toughness is to put yourself in mentally difficult situations over and over and over again. So that's where, the best adventure racers in the world have just been doing it for years and know that the body is going to break down. You just have to keep going. So I did a race in Utah in the middle of the summer, which is around Moab, which is, for me in the Yukon, is insanely hot. And we started out in this race, and it was a big day of trekking and across the desert. And there was this one, we all ran out of water, and it was pretty desperate. And we came across this this watering hole, I guess, but it was just this most disgusting water that you just couldn't think about drinking it. But and you did, but we got into it to cool ourselves off.
Okay.
And so what I didn't know is I had a blister. I shouldn't say I didn't know, but I guess it wasn't bad that I really even thought about it. But I clearly had a blister on my foot from the heat and just the amount of mileage to that point. And so I got infected. So 4 days later, I'm running on a leg from my knee down that is the size of my thigh almost. And we were, we're running in the top 5 and trying to get a podium spot in this race. And I remember, there's times that when I could barely weight bear it. And then toward the end of the race, where I knew we had a shot at beating one of the best, the best teams in the world at that point. And running on that leg for like multiple hours and towing, teammates and to your point of crossing the line. So we crossed the line and, 2 minutes behind the team. So we ended up in 4th place, but that was kind of our breakthrough race, and breakthrough in a mental capacity too, for myself, is that once almost instantaneously I crossed that line and I couldn't walk, 15 minutes later, because you just have the adrenaline dump and the body your brain just says, okay, you can shut it down now. And that's the power and the strength of mental toughness that people just have no concept until you put yourself in really challenging situations to really see what you're made of. And that's what adventure racing did for me, is it forced me to see what I was made of. Like it was, Greg, what can you do? And I think that in a lot of ways, I found that I was stronger than I thought I was. And in some ways, I found that, you're not as strong as you think you are. So that's kind of always how I've tried to challenge myself in life. And mental toughness, I can't overstate it, what you can do when you put your mind to it, what you can actually achieve.
Do you, so I know this is one thing I remember hearing from Brother Dave. He was in mountaineering, and he used to subscribe to numerous different people to listen to the ways they would talk about mountaineering and a lot of the mental toughness things. And there was one guy, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, and maybe it was a couple different people, but they said, you don't, or at least his viewpoint was, you don't train suffering. He would say basically you go out and you train to do what you do best, and you train to get better and better at it, and then you would save the suffering part of it until the actual event, and then you would rely on your mental toughness to get you through just the, whatever it was when you actually got there, if the conditions were way worse than you ever could have trained in or whatever. I don't know. And yet I know there are some people who then, but when they do go and train, they do train, and the training that they do is sort of training that suffering almost. It's super intense. It breaks them down so that they can build themselves up. It's kind of a complex thing, What are your thoughts on that, if that made sense, I guess?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. The training that I do for sport is, like, when I say I have a 4-hour run to do, I put that on the calendar, and no matter what's happening, that run happens.
Okay.
Like it can be raining, it can be, snowing, it doesn't matter. And that's just what happens. Now, I learned really to suffer through the actual competition. Mm-hmm. That's where I really learned how to do it. So to go out and specifically train to suffer, well, I don't necessarily, do it anymore. I used to, and I still do, is like when the weather is crap, like that's when you get out, because that's what you're just going to be dealing with on game day. Mm-hmm. Like when I go to a race now, I am dying for the weather to be absolutely garbage. Like I want to go to a race where it's raining and it's like +1 and it's windy. Just the worst case scenario that you can come up with weather-wise, that's what I want to race in, because I know that I'm going to be mentally stronger than probably everybody else there, even if they're physically better. The long goal in those conditions are going to break them down before they're ever going to break me down. Mm. And with that knowledge, it's really easy to hope for bad weather. Yeah. I did a race in Northwest Territories it was a 250 kilometer stage race where you had to pull all your gear with you. And then you slept at night in a tent, and this was in February. So it's like minus 30 to minus 40.
Are we talking Celsius or Fahrenheit there?
Celsius.
Oh.
So, I mean, so, this race, and in this particular race, I had done it and won it the year before. And then the next year there was a really great runner from a Canadian guy. But he lived down south, Vancouver or somewhere soft like that. And,
there's that jab.
Vancouver listeners, he said it, not us.
So basically, he was doing this race, and a far better runner, like just a lead, like a really good runner, technically on probably his cadence and his speed and everything. So so we were doing this race against each other, and I was like, we're at the start line. It's like, whew, I know this guy is fast. He's one of the best in Canada. So we're going to see how this all shakes out. But he had a super lightweight sled. He was barely wearing any clothes, and I was thinking, this guy he's a bit out of his element. So there's a good chance here. So day one, he goes out like a rocket, and luckily for me, he went in the wrong direction about 200 meters into the race and lost some time there. But I wasn't about to tell him to turn around. But anyways, he catches up, and we race together for a few hours. Weather gets really cold. It gets really windy. He doesn't have enough clothes on. I put my snowshoes on. I can travel faster with the snowshoes, and then punching holes through the deep snow. And I could see him just not a lot of muscle mass to be able to power through that kind of stuff. Just a very efficient runner. And yeah, day one, I would go into the middle of the transition. This is about 30 kilometers into the first day, and he comes out of the transition just ahead of me, and the wind really starts to howl, and you can just see he's just in meltdown mode. So I pass him, and he just literally went off. He was so out of it that he went off course and just couldn't keep it together. And I see him snow machine by me on the race director's snowmobile. So that was a pretty high point for me, because getting beat was obviously not going to be high on my priority list. And he, on paper, he should have beat me. Well, maybe not on paper in those conditions, but certainly on down south on any kind of a road race or something, he would have owned me. But in the elements with the mental that I had and being training in those conditions and just knowing, it certainly gave me an advantage. And I think that's, it's a good place to be.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and then you're looking at that translating over into hunting. You could be the best runner in the world, but you throw in those other variables like you're talking about, and all of a sudden some of that stuff isn't going to cut it anymore. So that's cool. You threw out a couple things, and like as far as scheduling, so do you schedule your exercise? And is that something that helps you stick to it? You're like, yep, it's on the calendar. That means it exists, and I'm going to do it no matter what. I guess, is that something you'd suggest for a lot of folks? Or
yeah, I can't overstate the importance for me of not just the schedule and the calendar, but the
actual doing of it, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, but the discipline. I am very regimented in my day-to-day life. Like, I know 4:30, I wake up every morning, I drink X amount of water, I then go straight down to the gym. I do a training session in the gym. I then come back upstairs. I make breakfast. I have my whole morning routine is the same every day, other than when I'm in the field. And that consistency and dedication just has put me in a place where I literally get more done in the hours when most people are sleeping than a lot of people get in their 8-hour day job. And that's just straight up being disciplined to be able to dedicate to that. And because it's all about the goal for me. So what do I want to achieve? And what are the steps that I need to take in order to get there? And once you lay that out and you make it, this is a must. This isn't it's not a maybe. It's just, this is what I'm doing. So you go and do it, and it becomes easy.
It doesn't sound easy.
No, I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah, I think it's really okay. So you talk about it's not easy. Literally speaking, there are things that are easier to do than actually going and physically, working out or whatever it's going to be. But think about how difficult it is to force yourself after, you woke up at some who knows what time, after you hit the snooze button 4 times. You rushed, you got to work, let's say you didn't even have time to throw your lunch in the fridge. Cough, cough, Mark, cough. Anyway, but then...
I've been off the refrigeration lately.
Yeah, guy eats a lukewarm lunch every day. It doesn't matter what it is, even yogurt.
I feel like I've been on this to make me stronger, but today I've left a couple question marks.
Well, yeah.
No ramifications, but
then you get home and you're like, you still by the time you get home on a day like that, probably are in a complete scramble because you've just never had time to actually think or figure out what the heck's going on. And then in that state of mind, try to go in your basement or whatever to do a workout. That is way harder because you still have no idea what the heck's going on. The whole day basically hits you in the face instead of punching the day in the face.
Yeah,
that's a good way to look at it.
I've been there too, right? I mean, it's only through figuring yourself out and figuring out what you need to do and making the decision to do it. That's the thing about it is I think we all know what we should do. Like, I mean, you have to have your head in the sand if you don't know what it takes to be physically fit, and what it takes to eat well. Like it's just hard.
Right.
It's just hard. Like our society is not set up to promote success in a lot of those basic understandings that we know. Like if you don't want to be fat, don't eat food, okay? And get some exercise. Like it's not rocket science, but we are looking for, we're looking for it to be easier, and that's where I found a system for me that it's just not an option. When you make a decision to do something, not following through with that is way harder than it is to move forward and just do the work that it takes to get it done. Yeah. And that's how I look at the physical fitness, because it translates to just feeling so much better and dominating every day. That snooze button thing, I would love to create an app where if you hit the snooze button, your phone burns up.
It gets louder.
Nobody would ever hit the snooze button in this day and age because we can't be without our phones. So everyone would get out of bed and do it. And that's what it is for me. I just don't leave things as options. Take it off the table.
I'd love to read the disclaimer on that app download. May result in...
Yeah, you might burn your house down, but you're awake.
Yeah, that'll get you up.
What time I'm interested. What time are you going to bed at night then? You're getting up at 4:30. You're busting it all day. What time are you shutting it down?
Yeah, I usually shut it down shortly after the kids do. So somewhere between 9 and 9:30, because I don't, it's funny. Like I produce a television show, but I don't watch TV. Like I don't have time for it. And because I'm very focused on what I need to do. So if I'm not getting the proper sleep, then, I'm just at a detriment. So I don't have a lot of fluff during the day. like I try to maximize, and I'm always not successful. Like let's get serious. Like I can sit and scroll through social media longer than I should. I do everything that everybody else does, but what I probably catch myself a little bit quicker and minimize those things. And I don't spend, like if I do watch something on television, for me, it needs to be educating me to moving my situation forward, whether it's, learning about more social media, whether it's learning about, food or the body, just all of the things that interest me and that really are promoting my overall end game. That's where when I look for entertainment, I look for educational content, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, you might say like, oh, he doesn't have TV, like the irony, right? But like to perform in the mountains at the level that you want to and that you do,
which then people want to see about on TV,
which people want to see on TV, like it's just not happening. Like unless you're as focused, unless you have that kind of focus. So that's cool. Is you're talking about like, your goals and things like that, when you're making those decisions to exercise and eat right and maintain that regimen. And, if you do have extra time, you're essentially learning about, fitness and health. Is that end goal? Is that the hunt? I mean, is that the thing on the horizon that you're always working towards, or is it other things as well?
It's definitely other things as well. There's so many aspects to this business that I'm in. And when you talk about the business side of it, I know how to mountain hunt. Like I know how to fly airplanes. Like I know how to suffer. Like these things have been forged through 25 years of doing it. What I am not great at is the business side of this industry. And I really spend a lot of time focusing on trying to be a better boss, a better, manager, a better at, whether it's social media, better at the media marketing. So these are new things to me that I don't feel that I am at the top of my game. And that's where I really enjoy the learning part and trying to be better. Because ultimately the goal is to showcase what it is that we do here in the North, and what I've built, what the machine that is Greg McHale and Greg McHale's Wild Yukon, is to be able to portray that in a manner that is not elitist, or it's not it's entertaining, and I just want to be the best that I can be.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, and through the media that you guys produce, and I got to throw tip my hat to Carl as well, because not only is he an awesome videographer, takes amazing still images, and you guys tell an amazing story together. You got to have a guy that can keep up with you, to capture that content. So anyway, Carl, who's
way to go, Carl.
He's your MC Ryan of sorts, man. And that's got to be a rare find as well, to have somebody with those talents, but that can also physically do it, suffer with you, and then also, you guys are oftentimes, mountain hunting's not easy. The weather sucks a lot of the time, and you guys have done 10,000% more than I ever have and probably ever will. But you're getting shots and capturing things when the last thing you probably want to be doing is getting shots and capturing things. So
that's the best time to do it.
That's my props to Carl right there. So
yes, Carl, but the team is really three of us.
Okay.
It's so Dave runs all the videography.
Oh, okay.
Carl does the still imagery and some backup imagery. So there's three of us in the mountains, hard charging the whole time, and it's interesting because I believe that we are the best videography mountain hunting team on the planet, and none of us have come to the video from this world of media production. We did this. We've done this together, and in fact, Dave and Carl, before they met me, never even hunted.
Amazing!
And
wow.
So neither one of them are really come from this hunting background, and not a videography background. We built this, just through hard work, and that's kind of what makes, in a big way, makes the three of us, unique and a good team. A lot of times, sometimes we are not a good team, and sometimes, when there's a breakdown, whether it's a physical breakdown in the mountains, or it's a mental breakdown in the mountains because we've been pushing for 3 weeks hard and nobody wants to go back into the field because it's raining out, and Greg's probably going to drag us through some bullshit and it's just going to suck. But we always, the one thing about our team is that we've had the ability to this point to be able to overcome a lot of those challenges, both in and off the field. And who knows what the future holds, but I do know that the two guys that I spend the most time in the field are like brothers. And if you've ever had a brother or a sibling, you'll know that sometimes everything is great and sometimes it's not so great, and that's just life. And I'm super proud to call both those guys my friends and get to spend the time in the hills I do with them.
No, that's cool. And it sounds like, as you kind of describe, Carl and Dave there, like one thing that seems to be consistent is, whether it's photography, videography, hunting, like you said, they hadn't hunted previously. So even just learning how to hunt and that you're all willing and probably actually have a desire and kind of program to even seek out challenges, take them on head on, and overcome and try and be the best at it that you can be. And that's interesting to see that kind of crossover from the different, I guess, genres, if you will, of kind of what each of you guys are doing out there or accomplishing. And then you're talking about the brotherhood thing too there. There's something about enduring suck together that I think does create some cool bonds.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's, whether it's been, you just look at, military and some of the bonds that are created in those situations where, you really need to depend on each other. Those are things that are, I'm not comparing what we do to fighting wars, but I'm just trying to say that I think that there are there are a lot of similarities between hardship and friendship.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put that, for sure. So, all cool stuff.
Mark, you got your little your notes there.
I've got a big cheat sheet here.
This is one of the podcasts I've seen, or one of the most noted, if that's a word, podcasts I've seen you come to.
Oh yeah, I even typed it out.
I know that. Yeah, it's not your usual chicken scratch.
Illegible.
No one can read it. It looks
words.
like hieroglyphics.
What how do you what are things that you do to stay positive? Like you said, sometimes it does suck. Sometimes you are broke down. I'm sure people are, somebody's mood might be higher or lower than somebody else's at some time. Like, what are things that you do to like kind of keep mentally in the game and also, I guess, still trying to have fun, and then maybe kind of connected, but I'd assume there's been times when you're weathered in and you're spending maybe multiple days in a tent. How do you stay mentally in it during those times as well?
Speaking of notes, take notes here, Mark, because when I convince us to do stupid stuff like, buy a boat, buy a Subaru, stuff like that, I think you should take notes on how to stay positive.
The boat thing left me with some question marks. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to get onto yours guys' situation.
That's all right. That's kind of unique. Yeah.
Hunter's quarrel over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but how to stay positive. See, it's funny because I think that most people probably won't understand. I don't know if I'm going to explain it properly, but when times are the out there, my go-to is laugh and say, "This is awesome." Like,
Okay.
and
Fake it till you make it.
and I can not even fake it till you make it. It's just like, I really take pleasure when stuff really sucks. Like when the weather is crap and you're soaked and you're just gutting it out, and you know that there is nothing that is going to happen with the exception of something catastrophic happening to your team, but if it's just, you or your team, but if it's just, weather and just suck, then I kind of enjoy it. So it's really, I don't usually get down. I usually laugh. And then what happens is the other guys just, they kind of don't have a choice. Everyone starts laughing, right? It's just like, or you can be the odd man out and you can not think that it's funny.
Do you think they're laughing, Greg, because they're like, my God, this man is obviously insane. We're in the middle of nowhere. How
do we make it this far back with this guy?
just laugh. Just laugh too when he laughs.
Yeah, that very well could be it, but they keep coming back. So
That's true. That's true.
So I mean, the option is definitely there for them not to show up again for the next time, and they keep coming back. So obviously they're interested in the suck to a certain degree, the Sufferfest as well. So yeah, it's good. So.
How do you know, like, you mentioned, and I can follow along with what you're saying, it's easier to sort of take pleasure in what's going on when, even if it sucks, you at least know, some bad weather or whatever, hey, chances are this isn't going to kill us. Nobody's going to be in super duper danger. It just sucks. But when you get into those situations, I don't know if have you found yourself in the situation many times, and what's it been like when all of a sudden you start looking around and you're thinking, oh no, this could get pretty bad. Like how do you know at what point pushing it to the limit is sort of okay? We are steadily approaching the limit and may cross beyond it. Where do you find your limit?
Yeah, I think that for me, and I've been there numerous times, whether it's mountaineering and, having your, an avalanche take out your ropes that you just walked off of 50 meters ago, or, a couple of years ago there, I crashed my Super Cub, scouting for sheep, moving fuel into a remote location, and that's, pushing the limits of my ability as a pilot and the ability of the aircraft. Try in the pursuit of sheep.
So totally worth it.
So I understand, and last year I got caught in a rock slide on a goat hunt, and found myself under a 2 truck size, one boulder that was larger than a pickup truck and one that was, larger than 2 or 3 human bodies. So, and I find myself underneath these pile of rocks sliding down the mountain. So, I mean, that's one in particular that is, you gotta step back from that and go, whoa. But, you can't control it. That's nature. That's the game that we play. Was the airplane thing in my control? Absolutely. Did I fail? 100% I failed. Did I fail in the rock slide? Yes, I failed there too. Because what I chose to do was I chose to lead the team down the easiest route off the mountain versus the safest route. And fortunately, I was the one that went down in the rock slide. Nobody else got caught in it. Because if all 3 of us had have got caught in it, probably 1 or 2 of us would have died. So that was one that was a real eye opener for me, because you also have you have other people that are depending on you, and you've got to make good choices. And I took the weak choice there. Instead of going down through the Alder, which would have taken many more hours to get off the mountain, I chose to go down the gully. And 5 minutes before the rocks, I was in the rock slide. It was like the hair stood up on the back of my neck, and I knew that this was not, the stability of these rocks was not ideal. And I chose to continue down that. So was that a mistake? 100%. Was crashing the Super Cub a mistake? 100% mine. And I own it, and just trying to figure out how to not make those kind of mistakes again, and listening to the things that I guess that's all part of growing. So I have two guys that count on me to make good decisions, and I've rode the fine line, and I probably, just my personality is one that I probably won't stop riding the fine line, but as long as I do it as best I can, that's kind of all I can try for.
Geez, both those situations, Ilya. I mean, yeah, I'm sitting here wondering to myself, I'm trying to picture a situation like that and think of a way that you can make it out to the point where you're talking to us on a podcast today. I mean, those are big ones.
Those are big ones. But I mean, Greg, you've spent a good portion of your life like pushing yourself to the edge, right? Like building that mental toughness, kind of extending those boundaries, if you will, of your comfort zone, and like I guarantee your comfort zone on the mountain and what you're cool with would be different than mine, right? And I think to Jim's point, it's and I guess it just proves what a person is capable of, and my hat goes off to you, because I think you've created some pretty amazing, I guess, physical and mental, I wouldn't even call them boundaries for yourself, because it doesn't sound like there's really any boundaries. Like, and you also,
there definitely are boundaries. Like we all have them. It's just the degree of which they are. Yeah, I mean, I don't really think that I'm, a lot different than anybody else. It's just the degree of how far I'm willing to go to find out who I am is just a little bit different, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Man, I feel like we've covered so much cool stuff, and now, like, I've even got stuff that I want to talk about here. Gear-related stuff. What's in your pack? What stuff from your mountaineering background has crossed over into your hunting background, as far as like ropes, self-arrest tools, things like that maybe aren't always commonly carried by folks, but maybe should be more often. How do you use them? I don't know, Jim. I feel like we have like 10 more podcasts in the future.
Yeah, you're right. But I think the concept
safety,
of
backcountry safety.
Yeah. I think the concept though of mountain hunting, for one, it's one that we have gotten a little bit into, but we've kind of just grazed the surface, and it's one that it's a big topic. I mean, you're hunting on big giant mountains, and you're hunting for critters that are. One of the things I even think is really neat about it is that you talk about sheep and the animals that live in those mountains, and you just think about how in my head, because I always, most people try to think of animals and how they're living. They think of them similar to how they themselves as a human would feel living there. But a lot of those animals is just all they ever know. But you think to yourself, a sheep living in the mountains, they got to have a lot of mental toughness. They live there all the time, and we just visit them for, a few days relatively to try and hunt them. But it's a huge topic. There's so much that goes into it.
No, for sure. Yeah, you look at a mountain goat. You're in mountain goat country, like you're describing there, Greg. And you're like, oh man, this is sketchy. And the mountain goat is just going, oh, lichens. I'm gonna eat those.
Yeah,
exactly. In comparison to certainly animals like goats and sheep, we aren't near as capable as we think that we are sometimes.
Yeah. We head out there with packs on our back and camp and food and all this, that, and the other thing. They're just going around in their fur.
Doing their thing. Yeah.
Fur and 4-wheel drive all the time. So, man, well, hopefully we've set the stage. Unless you have anything else more up your sleeve, Jim, or even you, Greg. Do you feel like we left anything out, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, we probably we actually didn't talk a whole lot about hunting, so it's very interesting. But I mean, it's great talking to you guys. So I mean, whatever you got.
Cool. Oh yeah, you as well. I think there is more potential. We got to have you back on at some point. I think that's undoubtedly the case to talk more specifically about hunting, but it was interesting to talk about the mental aspect of things, and the adventure racing stuff was super intriguing.
Yeah,
I can't say I'm ever going to find myself in one. I grew up.
Oh, you weren't talked into it.
I grew up more of like the 200 and 400 meter dash kind of guy, not the kilometers running kind of guy or trekking kind of guy, but.
Yeah, right.
I think like what we did do here, like I was kind of, we've set the stage. We've talked really a lot about the most important piece of gear, right? When you're gonna maybe embark on one of these missions, and that's you, and I'm guilty of this. I sit in my living room on my phone and I look for the lightest pack, and I look for this and I look for that. When really, what I should have done is set the alarm and worked on myself.
Yeah.
You got it.
Maybe I should focus on this piece of gear.
I think if we all focused on our own personal piece of gear, and we get that in as finely tuned shape as we possibly can, then a lot of other things in life, not just mountain hunting, will fall and you find it quite easy. That's kind of how I look at things anyways. So and I think that it works. It certainly works for me and how I feel on a day-to-day basis. So, yeah.
Makes total sense.
Cool, man.
Sweet.
I love it. Well, Greg, we appreciate the time. Had a super fun conversation. Appreciate you giving us a window into you and your life. I think we've got a million more things we can talk about. Super stoked to talk about those in the future and really dive into this topic and everything that revolves around it. And until the next time, hopefully it's starting to warm up for you guys a little bit up there, and spring's around the corner.
Yeah, it is around the corner. The days are getting longer, and looking forward to to getting back out into the mountains. So thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you fellas.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And as usual, everybody out there listening, definitely let us know what you think about this one. Hit us up in the comments on Instagram, all that good stuff. And let us know what topics you want to hear about, too. If we get Greg back on, what do you specifically want to hear him speak to? Check out his show, too, if you haven't checked it out yet. And then you can really think of some stuff that you want to hear him talk about, too, once you actually see him in action. So I think that'll do it.
Until next time.
All right.
Cool.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.